The marble floors of the Moretti estate gleamed under my mother's careful hand, each stroke of her cloth a prayer for invisibility. I learned early that being the maid's daughter meant existing in the spaces between, too present to ignore, too insignificant to acknowledge. But there was one person who had always seen me, really seen me, until the day they took him away. I pressed my palm against the cool glass of the servants' entrance, watching raindrops race down the window. 7 years. 7 years since Aiden Moretti had been dragged from this house, his gray eyes finding mine across the grand foyer one last time before his father's men forced him into a black car. He'd been 18 then, all sharp angles and barely contained rage, fighting against the destiny his family had planned. I'd been 17, crying silently in the shadows where good maids' daughters belonged. "Leah, the silver needs polishing for tonight's reception." My mother's voice pulled me from the memory. She looked tired, the lines around her eyes deeper than I remembered. 25 years of service to the Moretti family had carved itself into her features, like an artist's signature. Permanent, defining, inescapable. "Yes, Mama." I turned from the window, from the ghost of a boy I'd once loved, and headed toward the kitchen where the silver waited like a small mountain of obligation. The estate had been in chaos for days. Don Moretti, the old man who'd ruled this family with an iron fist for 40 years, had finally died. His funeral had drawn every powerful family in the city, a parade of black suits and calculating eyes, all wondering who would inherit the throne. The reading of the will was scheduled for tonight, and servants whispered that it wouldn't be straightforward. Nothing with the Morettis ever was. I picked up the first fork, the ornate M engraved in its handle catching the light. How many times had I polished this silver as a child, while Aiden sat at the kitchen table doing homework, his long legs stretched out, occasionally looking up to tell me about a book he'd read or a place he wanted to see. "When I'm in charge," he'd said once, maybe a year before they sent him away. "Things will be different. You won't have to hide, Leah. I'll make sure everyone knows." He'd stopped then, as if realizing the impossibility of finishing that sentence. What could the heir to a mafia empire promise the daughter of his family's maid? Everything changed the night they caught us in the garden. We hadn't been doing anything wrong. Not really. Just talking, sitting too close maybe, my head on his shoulder while he pointed out constellations. But his father had seen something dangerous in that innocent intimacy. Something that threatened bloodlines and alliances and carefully laid plans. They'd shipped Aiden to Sicily the next morning. "To learn what it means to be a Moretti," his father had said coldly, while I'd watched from the servants' quarters, my heart shattering with each second that passed. "Leah." Rosa, the head of housekeeping, bustled into the kitchen. "The new dawn arrives in 2 hours. Everything must be perfect. Mrs. Moretti wants you specifically to arrange the flowers in the study." My hands stilled on the silver. The new dawn? I thought they were reading the will tonight. Rosa's weathered face softened. Apparently the will was already read to the successor privately. The gathering tonight is just formality, politics. She leaned closer, voice dropping. "They say he's been in Sicily all this time, completely transformed. Dangerous now, cold as winter stone." My stomach clenched. Only one person fit that description. "Who is it?" "Aiden Moretti. The prodigal son returns." The fork slipped from my fingers, clattering against the marble counter. 7 years of wondering if I'd imagined the connection between us, if that boy had ever really existed, or if I'd romanticized a friendship born of proximity and loneliness. And now he was coming back, but not as the Aiden I remembered. As Don Moretti, as someone untouchable even by my memories. "Leah." Rosa touched my shoulder. "Are you all right, Kara?" "Fine. Just surprised." I forced steadiness into my voice, picked up the fork, resumed polishing. "I'll arrange the flowers." The study smelled of leather and old cigars, of power accumulated over generations. I moved through the room with practiced efficiency, gathering the dead flowers from yesterday, preparing fresh arrangements. White lilies, his grandfather's favorite. I wondered if Aiden even remembered such details, or if Cicely had burned away everything except the parts necessary for survival. I was adjusting the final arrangement when I felt it. A shift in the air, a change in pressure that made the hair on my arm stand up. Someone was watching me. I turned slowly, my heart already knowing what my eyes would confirm. He stood in the doorway, and for a moment I couldn't breathe. This wasn't the boy I remembered. This was a man carved from marble and menace, all hard lines and controlled power. Aiden had always been tall, but now he seemed to fill the doorway, broad shoulders encased in a perfectly tailored black suit that screamed wealth and danger. His dark hair was shorter, swept back to reveal a face that had lost every trace of softness. Sharp cheekbones, a jaw that could cut glass, and those gray eyes. God, those eyes that used to look at me with warmth and wonder, now held nothing but ice. But he knew me. I saw the recognition flicker across his face, saw his pupils dilate slightly, saw his jaw clench with what might have been emotion, or might have been anger. I couldn't tell anymore. You're still here. His voice had deepened, roughened with cigarettes or screaming or both. Not a question. An observation delivered with the same emotional weight as commenting on the weather. My mother and I live in the servants' quarters. The words came out steadier than I felt. Where else would I be? Something dangerous flashed in his eyes. I thought you might have left, found a life away from this place. People like me don't get to leave, Aiden. The name felt both familiar and foreign on my tongue, like speaking a language I'd once known fluently but had almost forgotten. We stay, we serve, we remain invisible. He moved into the room, and I instinctively stepped back, my hip bumping the desk. He noticed, and his mouth twisted into something that wasn't quite a smile. Afraid of me now, Leah? Should I be? Probably. He stopped a few feet away, but it felt too close, like he was taking up all the oxygen in the room. They say I'm dangerous now. Cold. Ruthless. Everything a proper Dawn needs to be. And are you? His gaze held mine, and for just a second, I saw something break through that icy exterior. Pain, maybe. Or regret. But then it was gone, locked away behind walls I didn't know how to scale anymore. Yes. The single word hung between us like a blade. I wanted to ask what they'd done to him in Sicily. What had happened to transform the boy who'd shown me constellations into this man who looked at me like I was a stranger. But I knew better. The invisible girl didn't get to ask those questions. I should go. I moved toward the door, needing distance, needing air, needing to process the fact that Aiden Moretti was back, and somehow more untouchable than ever. His hand shot out, catching my wrist. Not hard, but firm enough to stop me. The touch sent electricity racing up my arm, and I hated my body for remembering his touch after all these years. Leah. My name in his mouth sounded like a prayer and a curse. Tonight's gathering. Stay out of sight. Things are going to get complicated. Things are always complicated with your family. I tried to pull away, but his grip tightened fractionally. I mean it. There are people coming tonight who would use any weakness against me. And you... He stopped, jaw clenching again. I'm not your weakness. I'm nothing to you. Just the maid's daughter. The words tasted bitter, but they were true. Whatever we'd been to each other 7 years ago had died the day they sent him away. He released my wrist abruptly, like my skin had burned him. You're right. You're nothing. Now go. I fled, my chest tight. my eyes burning with tears I wouldn't let fall until I reached the safety of my room, because that was what Maid's daughters did. We absorbed the cruelty of the powerful and kept moving, kept serving, kept existing in those invisible spaces. But as I closed the door to the servants' quarters behind me, I heard footsteps in the hallway above. Aiden's office was directly overhead, and the sound of something heavy hitting a wall, followed by a string of Italian curses that made the old house seem to tremble. Maybe I wasn't nothing after all. Maybe I was something worse. A complication. The thought should have comforted me. Instead, it felt like a death sentence. The Moretti estate transformed as evening descended. Crystal chandeliers blazed like captured stars, casting golden light across marble floors I'd polished that morning. From my position in the servants' corridor, I watched through the narrow window as black cars arrived one by one, disgorging men in expensive suits and women dripping in diamonds. The 5 families had come to pay respects to the dead Don and assess the new one. Leah, take these canapes to the drawing room. My mother pressed a silver tray into my hands, her eyes worried. Stay invisible, Piccola. Tonight is dangerous. I nodded, understanding what she meant. When the families gathered, servants were furniture, present but not acknowledged, seeing everything while pretending blindness. One wrong glance, one overheard conversation, could end a life. The drawing room hummed with controlled tension. I moved through the crowd like a ghost, offering canapes to men who took them without looking at me, to women whose perfume cost more than my annual salary. Their conversations washed over me in fragments. Heard he eliminated 3 rival operations in Sicily. Cold bastard, just like his grandfather. Wonder if he'll honor the old alliances. I kept my head down, my movements practiced, invisible, until I felt his eyes on me. Aiden stood across the room, surrounded by older men who gestured animatedly while he remained perfectly still, a dark star around which lesser planets orbited. But his gray eyes tracked my movement through the crowd with predatory focus. It made my hands shake slightly, made the champagne glasses on my tray clink together softly. A woman materialized beside me, tall, blonde, draped in red silk that clung to curves designed to make men stupid. She plucked a canapé from my tray with manicured fingers, her diamond bracelet catching the light. Aiden has excellent taste in staff, she purred to her companion, another woman equally polished and predatory. So, accommodating. The second woman laughed, sharp as breaking glass. I wonder if he samples the help like his father did. I hear the old Don had a thing for the pretty maids. My face burned, but I kept my expression neutral. Don't react. Don't give them the satisfaction. This one's quite pretty under all that dowdiness. The blonde circled me like I was livestock at auction. What's your name, girl? Leah, ma'am. Leah. She drew out the syllables mockingly. Italian mother, I presume? And the father? I don't know, ma'am. Ah, a bastard and a maid. How deliciously tragic. She turned to her friend. Do you think our new Don will be as liberal with the staff as his father was? Before I could respond, not that I would have, a deep voice cut through their laughter like a blade through silk. Isabella. The temperature in our corner of the room dropped 10 degrees. The blonde, Isabella, spun around, her cruel smile faltering when she saw Aiden standing there, his expression carved from winter stone. Aiden, darling. She recovered quickly, reaching out to touch his arm. We were just... I know exactly what you were doing. His voice was quiet, lethal, mocking my household staff, in my house, at my reception. It was just harmless conversation. Get out. The 2 words landed like bullets. Isabella's perfectly made-up face went pale. Excuse me? Leave my home. Now. You and Chiara. He gestured to Isabella's companion. The Castellano family is no longer welcome at Moretti gatherings. You can't be serious. Isabella's voice rose, drawing attention from nearby conversations. Over a servant? My father will... Your father will do nothing, because he values his import licenses more than he values your pride. Aiden's eyes were glacial. You have 60 seconds to leave before I have you removed. And trust me, Isabella, I will not be gentle about it. The room had gone silent, every eye watching this confrontation. Isabella looked around desperately, searching for allies, but found only carefully neutral expressions. In this world, power was absolute, and Aiden had just demonstrated his. You'll regret this, she hissed, but she was already moving toward the door, Kiara scurrying behind her. Aiden waited until they'd left, before his gaze finally dropped to me. I stood frozen, tray clutched in white-knuckled hands, acutely aware of every eye in the room now assessing me, calculating what I meant to the new dawn. Are you all right? His voice softened fractionally, enough that only I could hear. I'm fine. You didn't need to. Yes, I did. Something flickered in his eyes, too fast for me to identify. Return to the kitchen. You're done serving tonight. It wasn't a suggestion. I nodded once and fled, feeling the weight of speculation follow me like smoke. In the kitchen, Rosa grabbed my arm. What happened? Everyone's talking about Don Aiden throwing out Isabella Castellano. She said some things. He didn't like it. I set the tray down with trembling hands. Madonna mia, Rosa crossed herself. Leah, you need to be careful. Very careful. The families will be watching you now, wondering what you are to him. I'm nothing to him. He was just defending his household's honor. But even as I said it, I remembered the look in his eyes. Protective, possessive, dangerous. The same look he'd given me 7 years ago when Marco Benedetti had tried to touch me at a family dinner, before Aiden had broken the other boy's nose and gotten himself restricted to the estate for a month. The party continued without me, but I couldn't settle. I retreated to my room in the servants' quarters, trying to read, to lose myself in stories of people whose problems didn't involve mafia politics and forbidden attractions. But every sound from the house above made me tense, wondering if Aiden would come find me, if he'd demand explanations for feelings neither of us could acknowledge. Around midnight, a knock on my door made me jump. I opened it to find not Aiden, but Marco Romano, his second in command, a mountain of a man with scarred knuckles and surprisingly gentle eyes. Miss Leah, Don Aiden requests your presence in his study. My stomach dropped. Now, if it's convenient. We both knew nothing about this was convenient, but you didn't refuse the Don summons. I followed Marco through the silent house, past the evidence of the departed guests, empty glasses, lipstick-stained napkins, the lingering scent of cigars and power. The study door was open. Aiden stood by the window, his jacket discarded, shirt sleeves rolled up to reveal forearms corded with muscle I didn't remember. He'd loosened his tie, and something about the casual dishevelment made him seem more dangerous, not less. Leave us, Marco. The door clicked shut, leaving us alone. Aiden didn't turn around. Do you know what they're saying? His voice was low, controlled. The families. About you. No. But I could guess. They think you're my lover, that I threw out Isabella Castellano because she insulted my mistress. He turned then, his expression unreadable. They think you're my weakness. I'm not. The words came out weaker than I intended. No. He moved toward me, each step deliberate. You're something far more dangerous than a weakness, Leah. You're a complication I can't afford. Then let me go. Let me leave the estate, find work elsewhere. No. The word cracked like a whip. You'll stay exactly where you are, under my roof, under my protection. Because if you leave, if you try to disappear, There are people in this city who will use you to get to me. I don't understand. But I was starting to, and it terrified me. He stopped close enough that I could smell his cologne. Something dark and expensive. Cedar and amber. Close enough that I had to tilt my head back to meet his eyes. You should have left years ago, he said quietly. Should have run the day they sent me to Sicily. Because I've spent 7 years trying to forget you, Leah. 7 years becoming the man my family needed me to be. Cold, ruthless, capable of making the decisions that keep our empire alive. His hand came up, fingers barely brushing my cheek. And then I walk into that study this afternoon and there you are, arranging flowers like you still belong in this house, like you still belong in my life. Aiden, don't. His thumb traced my lower lip, and I stopped breathing. Don't say my name like that, like you used to, before they took me away, before Sicily turned me into this. Into what? Into someone who would kill without hesitation, to protect what's mine. His eyes held mine, intense and terrifying. And whether you like it or not, whether it makes sense or not, you're mine to protect now. Because I threw down that gauntlet tonight when I defended you. The families know it. My enemies know it. And they'll use it. So I'm a target now. The reality settled over me like a shroud. Because of something I didn't ask for. Yes. At least he was honest. I stepped back, putting distance between us, needing to think. What do you want from me? Stay in this house. Stay visible enough that people know you're under my protection, but invisible enough that you don't become a trophy they can steal. And... He hesitated, something almost vulnerable crossing his face. Try to understand that I'm doing the best I can with an impossible situation. The situation being me. The situation being us. Whatever we were 7 years ago. Whatever we might have become if my father hadn't sent me away. His jaw tightened. That future died in Sicily, Leah, but I'll be damned if I let anyone hurt you because of sins that belong to me. I wanted to argue, to tell him I didn't need his protection, that I'd survived 7 years without him just fine. But we both knew that was a lie. The moment he'd defended me tonight, I'd become a chess piece in a game I barely understood. Fine, I'll stay. What choice did I have? But don't expect me to thank you for it. Something that might have been a smile ghosted across his lips. I wouldn't dream of it. He walked me back to the servants' quarters himself, Marco trailing at a discreet distance. At my door, he paused. Leah, what Isabella said about my father and the maids. His voice went rough. That's never happening, you understand? You're safe here. I nodded, not trusting my voice, because the real danger wasn't from Aiden forcing himself on me. It was from how badly a traitorous part of me wanted him to touch me again, to look at me the way he had when we were younger, to promise impossible futures under a canopy of stars. After he left, I lay in bed staring at the ceiling, listening to his footsteps in the office above. The same office where I'd watched him as a boy doing homework, where I'd learned the shape of his laughter, the cadence of his dreams. That boy was gone. Replaced by a man who spoke of killing casually, who ruled an empire built on blood and fear. But when he'd looked at me tonight, I'd seen a flicker of something. Grief, maybe, for the future we'd lost. Or hunger for a connection that made no sense but refused to die. Either way, I was trapped. Not by walls or locks, but by something far more dangerous. By the possibility that the boy I'd once loved still existed somewhere inside the monster Sicily had created. The whispers started the next morning. I felt them following me through the hallways, saw them in the sidelong glances of other staff members, heard them in the suddenly silent conversations that died when I entered a room. Isabella's humiliation had spread through the household like wildfire, and everyone wanted to know. Who was Leah Moretti's maid's daughter, really? The answer was complicated, and it started 25 years ago, when my mother arrived at this estate pregnant and desperate. I'd spent my whole life piecing together fragments of that story from overheard conversations and my mother's rare, wine-loosened confidences. She'd been 18, in love with someone she wouldn't name, working as a waitress when the old Don's wife had found her crying in a church. Mrs. Moretti, God rest her soul, had offered employment without questions, and my mother had accepted gratefully, even knowing she'd be raising her bastard daughter in the servants' quarters of a Mafia household. Leah. My mother appeared in the laundry room doorway, her face pale. We need to talk. We retreated to her small room, barely larger than a closet but meticulously clean. She closed the door and gripped my hands. Piccola, I need to tell you something. Something I should have told you years ago, but... She took a shaking breath. Your father. I know I always said I didn't know who he was, that it was a brief affair I preferred to forget. But that was a lie. My heart hammered. Mama. Your father was Roberto Castellano, Isabella's uncle. The world tilted. Castellano. One of the 5 families, which meant, I have their blood. The words came out numb. I'm not just the maid's daughter. I'm a Castellano bastard. Roberto died before I could tell him about you. Car accident, they said. Though in this world, who knows? She squeezed my hands tighter. I kept it secret to protect you. Bastards are complicated in these families. Some are embraced, others are eliminated as potential threats to inheritance. I didn't know which you would be, so I stayed silent. Does Don Moretti know? Does Aiden? The old Don knew. He promised to keep the secret as long as I served loyally. But now, her voice broke. Isabella will have gone home furious. If she investigates, if she discovers who you really are. She'll tell everyone. I finished the thought, my mind racing. And either the Castellanos will try to claim me as family to embarrass Aiden, or they'll try to eliminate me as a threat. We sat in silence, the weight of 25 years of secrets pressing down on us. Finally, my mother spoke again. There's more. Old Don Moretti. He was fond of you, Leah. Fonder than he should have been for a servant's child. And the way he looked at Aiden whenever you were near, it was like... She hesitated. Like he was watching something inevitable unfold. Something he'd planned. Planned? My voice came out sharp. What are you saying? I'm saying maybe there was a reason he never sent us away, even when other families commented on it. A reason he let you and Aiden spend so much time together as children. A reason he only separated you when you got older, and that connection became complicated. The memory hit me like a fist. The summer before they sent Aiden away. We'd been in the garden, my back against an oak tree, his arms caged on either side of me. 17 and 18, drunk on proximity and possibility. I'm going to marry you someday, he'd said, his gray eyes intense. I don't care what my father says, what the families expect. You're mine, Leah. You've always been mine. I'd laughed, tried to make it light even as my heart raced. Mafia princes don't marry maids' daughters. I'll change the rules. He'd leaned closer, his breath warm against my lips. I'll burn this whole system down if I have to. We'd never kissed. His father had found us before we could cross that line, and Aiden was gone by morning. But the promise had hung between us, impossible and intoxicating. A sharp knock interrupted my thoughts. Marco stood in the doorway, his expression carefully neutral. Miss Leah, Don Aiden has requested your presence for lunch, in the formal dining room. My mother's eyes widened. The formal dining room? That's where he meets with the family leadership. I'm aware. Marco's tone was gentle, but the Don was quite insistent. I followed him through the house, my stomach in knots. The formal dining room was exactly that, intimidatingly grand, with a table that could seat 20 and portraits of dead Morettis glaring from the walls. But only 2 places were set, at one corner where the morning light streamed through tall windows. Aidan stood by the sideboard, pouring wine with careful precision. He'd changed into a black shirt and slacks, the sleeves rolled up again in that way that made him look dangerous and domestic simultaneously. "Sit." He gestured to one of the chairs. "Aidan, I don't think—" It wasn't a request. But his tone softened. "Please, sit." I did, feeling absurdly out of place. A maid's daughter didn't dine in rooms like this, on china that cost more than she'd earn in a lifetime. Aidan set a wine glass before me, then took the seat adjacent rather than across, close enough that I could see the fine scar along his jaw I didn't remember, close enough to feel trapped. "We need to discuss what happened last night." He swirled wine in his glass, not drinking. "And what will happen as a consequence. I know. The families think I'm your mistress. They'll either try to use me against you or eliminate me as a distraction. Not just the families." His eyes met mine. The Castellanos specifically. Isabella went home and did exactly what you'd expect. Turned her humiliation into ammunition. She's been making calls, asking questions about you. My mouth went dry. "Has she discovered that you're Roberto Castellano's daughter?" "No, not yet." He set down his glass with deliberate care. "But she will. It's only a matter of time before someone remembers that your mother worked for the family briefly before Roberto's death, does the math, and realizes the timeline fits. How do you know about Roberto?" The question emerged hoarse. "My grandfather told me. The night before they sent me to Sicily." Something flickered across his face. Old pain, carefully controlled. "He said I needed to understand that loving you was complicated, that there were reasons we couldn't be together beyond just your mother's position. He never explained what those reasons were, but he made it clear that your bloodline mattered. So you've known for 7 years that I'm a Castellano bastard, and you never told me." I respected my grandfather's wishes. He wanted you protected, kept invisible. Aidan leaned back, regarding me with those unreadable gray eyes. "But invisibility isn't an option anymore, Leah. Not after last night." "Then what do you suggest?" "We get ahead of the revelation. Control the narrative before Isabella does." He paused, jaw tightening. "I'm going to announce that you're Roberto Castellano's daughter, and that you're under my formal protection as a member of one of the 5 families. That will start a war. It will start a conversation, a very careful, very political conversation about bloodlines and alliances and respect." His fingers drummed on the table. "The Castellanos have 2 choices. Acknowledge you as family, which obligates them to treat you with respect and makes you untouchable, or denounce you as a bastard with no claim, which frees me to continue protecting you without political complications. And if they choose a third option, if they try to eliminate me entirely," his expression went cold, dangerous, "then they'll discover exactly what Sicily taught me about eliminating threats. The promise of violence hung in the air between us. I should have been terrified, should have run. But a twisted part of me felt safer knowing this lethal man stood between me and the world. There's something else." I forced the words out. "My mother said your grandfather was fond of me, that he might have planned for us to—" I couldn't finish it. "To end up together?" Aidan's laugh was bitter. "He did. He told me so that last night. Said he'd spent years positioning pieces on a chessboard, waiting for the right moment. But then I did something stupid. I fell in love with you before he was ready for that move. And my father saw it, saw how vulnerable that made me, and sent me away to become someone who couldn't be manipulated through emotion." My breath caught. Fell in love. past tense, Leah. His eyes held mine, cold as winter. Whatever I felt at 18 died in Sicily. Had to die, if I was going to survive what they made me become. And what did they make you become? Someone who's killed 17 men. The confession landed like a stone. Someone who can order executions over breakfast. Someone who sees people as assets or obstacles, nothing between. He leaned forward, and I saw something break through that icy control. Grief, maybe, or rage at what he'd lost. Someone who looks at you and still feels something, which makes me dangerous and you a liability. Then let me go. I can't. The words sounded torn from him. Because even though I've tried to kill whatever we were, tried to burn it out with blood and violence and becoming everything my family needed, you're still there. In my head. In my chest. Making me feel things I shouldn't feel, want things I can't have. Aiden. He stood abruptly, putting distance between us. The announcement will happen tonight. There's a gathering of the 5 families. Neutral ground, Sacred Heart Cathedral's community hall. I'll reveal your bloodline and claim you under my protection. The Castellanos will have to respond immediately. And if they choose violence, then we'll have war. He said it like discussing the weather. But at least you'll be alive for it. I should have felt grateful. Should have thanked him for his protection, for standing between me and whatever darkness the families might bring. But instead, I felt angry. At him, at his grandfather, at a world where I was a chess piece moved around by men who couldn't even admit they cared whether I lived or died. I need to know something. I stood, facing him across the expensive table. In Sicily, when you were becoming this person, this Don who kills without hesitation, did you ever think about me? About what we had? His jaw clenched. Every day. And what did you think? That forgetting you would be easier than this. He moved around the table, closing the distance until we were inches apart. That becoming someone who didn't need you would hurt less than wanting something I couldn't have. That if I just killed enough, fought enough, bled enough, eventually you'd stop haunting me. Did it work? No. His hand came up, cupping my face with shocking gentleness. Nothing worked. Nothing made you go away. And now you're here. Real and complicated and more dangerous to me than any enemy. And I don't know how to protect you without destroying us both. His thumb traced my cheekbone, and I saw it then. The boy I'd loved still existed somewhere inside this cold, dangerous man. Buried deep, maybe broken. But there. Maybe we're already destroyed, I whispered. Maybe. His forehead touched mine, just for a second. But I'll be damned if I let anyone else do the destroying. If we go down, Leah, we go down fighting. Together. The word together settled into my chest like a promise and a threat, because together meant acknowledging this thing between us, this connection that defied logic and position and 7 years of forced separation. Together meant accepting that we were bound by something stronger than bloodlines or alliances. Together meant war. The Sacred Heart Cathedral's community hall gleamed with false piety and real power. Brass fixtures caught candlelight, making shadows dance across walls lined with portraits of saints who'd probably never imagined their images would witness Mafia summit meetings. I stood behind Aiden at the entrance. My new dress, black silk that he'd had delivered that afternoon, perfectly fitted, making me feel like I was wearing a costume. Or armor. Remember, Aiden murmured, his hand at the small of my back. You're Roberto Castellano's daughter, one of the 5 families. You have every right to be here. Easy for him to say. He'd been born into this world of power and violence. I'd just been dragged into it by an accident of birth I'd only learned about 24 hours ago. The hall fell silent as we entered. Every head turned, every eye assessed. I recognized faces from the reception. The Russos, the Benedettis, the Vittore family with their reputation for brutality. And there, at a table near the front, the Castellanos. Isabella sat beside her father, Lorenzo, a silver-haired man whose pleasant expression couldn't hide the calculation in his eyes. Aidan guided me to the central table, the position of honor reserved for the presiding family. Marco followed, along with two other men whose hands stayed close to concealed weapons. We sat, and only then did conversation resume. Muted, watchful. "You've brought an interesting guest, Don Moretti." Lorenzo Castellano's voice carried across the room. "Should we assume this gathering has a purpose beyond standard business?" "Indeed." Aidan's voice was cold, controlled. "I have an announcement regarding family lineage that affects several parties present." Isabella leaned forward, her eyes glittering with malice. She thought she knew what was coming, thought she'd orchestrated this revelation. She was wrong about who controlled the narrative. Aidan stood, commanding immediate attention. 26 years ago, Roberto Castellano had a relationship with a young woman named Maria Ricci. That relationship resulted in a child, a daughter. That child is Leah Ricci, who has lived under my family's roof her entire life. The room exploded in whispers. Isabella's triumphant expression flickered with confusion. This wasn't how she'd expected it to play out. "Leah carries Castellano blood," Aidan continued, his hand still on my shoulder, possessive and protective. "Which means she falls under the traditional protections afforded to family members of the five. I bring this to your attention, Don Castellano, so that you may acknowledge or deny her claim. But know this." His voice went lethal. "Regardless of your decision, she is under my formal protection. Any action taken against her will be considered an act of war against the Moretti family." Lorenzo stood slowly, his pleasant mask slipping to reveal something harder, more dangerous. "You presume to tell me how to handle my family's business, Don Moretti?" "I presume to protect what's mine." Aidan's voice didn't rise, but the threat was unmistakable. "Leah has lived in my household for 25 years. She is my responsibility. The question is whether she's also your family, Lorenzo. Because if she is, if you acknowledge Roberto's daughter, then she's untouchable by tradition and law. And if she's not..." His smile was cold. "Then she remains under my sole protection, and you have no say in how I choose to guard what's mine." The chess move was brilliant. Acknowledge me, and the Castellanos had to respect me, had to swallow the humiliation Isabella felt about being thrown out for insulting family. Deny me, and they lost any political ground to complain about my presence in Aidan's life. But I saw the calculation in Lorenzo's eyes. There was a third option, one Aidan had mentioned but hoped wouldn't come into play. "Roberto had no legitimate children," Lorenzo said slowly. "No wife, no acknowledged heirs. If this girl is truly his daughter..." He paused, letting tension build. "Then by blood and tradition, she has claim to his portion of the family holdings, his seat on our council, his vote in family decisions." The room went deadly silent, because that changed everything. I wasn't just a bastard to be acknowledged or ignored. I was a potential power player, someone with actual claim to Castellano resources and influence. Aidan's hand tightened imperceptibly on my shoulder. This was dangerous ground. If I claimed those holdings, I'd be obligated to the Castellano family, pulled into their sphere of influence, potentially removed from Aidan's protection. "Leah has no interest in Castellano business," Aidan said carefully. "She merely deserves the respect and protection afforded to anyone with 5 families' blood." "That's not for you to decide, is it?" Isabella's voice dripped with false sweetness. "If she's Roberto's daughter, she has rights, obligations. Perhaps we should ask her what she wants." All eyes turned to me. I felt the weight of their assessment, their calculation, A maid's daughter thrust into the center of Mafia politics, holding cards I barely understood. I stood slowly, Aiden's hand falling away. I was terrified, but I'd spent 25 years being invisible, being nothing. Maybe it was time to be something. I said, my voice steady despite my racing heart. What any person wants: safety, respect, the freedom to live without fear. I met Lorenzo's gaze. If acknowledging me as Roberto's daughter provides that, I welcome it. But I have no interest in holdings or council seats or family politics. I grew up in the servants' quarters, not a council room. I know nothing about your business and have no desire to learn. A pretty speech, Lorenzo acknowledged. But blood carries obligations, Miss Ricci. You can't claim family protection without accepting family responsibility. Then perhaps, Aiden's voice cut in, ice cold, we should discuss exactly what family means in this context. Because I've spent 7 years in Sicily learning about blood and loyalty and tradition. And one thing I learned is that forcing someone into obligations they don't want breeds resentment, rebellion, betrayal. He leaned forward, his eyes locked on Lorenzo. So here's my proposition. You acknowledge Leah as Roberto's daughter, which provides her the protection and respect she deserves. In return, she signs away any claim to Castellano holdings or political position. She remains in my household, under my care, and your family gains the diplomatic benefit of having shown mercy and generosity to a lost relative. And what do you gain from this arrangement? Lorenzo's eyes narrowed. Peace, stability, the assurance that no one will attempt to use Leah against me. Aiden's smile was dangerous. Because make no mistake, Lorenzo, if anyone tries to harm her, to kidnap her, to force her into your family politics against her will, I will respond with the full force of the Moretti family. I'll burn your operations to ash and salt the earth behind me. That's not a threat. It's a promise. The temperature in the room dropped. Several families shifted uncomfortably, recognizing that Aiden meant every word. You'd start a war over a servant girl? Isabella's voice was shrill. I'd start a war over what's mine, Aiden corrected, his hand returning to my shoulder in clear claim. And Leah Ricci, Castellano blood or not, is mine to protect. Now, Lorenzo, what's your decision? Do we do this the civilized way, or do we find out what Sicily taught me about war? The silence stretched, taut as a wire. Then Lorenzo smiled, the expression more unsettling than his earlier calculation. You've changed, young Moretti. Your grandfather would be proud. He inclined his head. Very well. I acknowledge Leah Ricci as Roberto Castellano's daughter. She is afforded the protection and respect of family, with the understanding that she claims no holdings or political position. Are these terms acceptable to you, Miss Ricci? Every instinct screamed that this was a trap, that accepting would somehow bind me in ways I couldn't foresee. But refusing would mean war, would mean dragging Aiden's family into conflict over me. Yes, I said. Those terms are acceptable. Then it's settled. Lorenzo raised his wineglass. To family, in all its complicated forms. The toast was echoed around the room, but I saw the looks being exchanged. This wasn't over. It was only beginning. The rest of the gathering passed in a blur. I sat beside Aiden, hyper-aware of his presence, of the way he kept me close, of the message it sent to everyone present. By the time we left, my face hurt from forcing neutral expressions, my body exhausted from tension. In the car, Aiden finally allowed his control to slip. That was dangerous. Lorenzo's playing a longer game than we realize. I know. I stared out the window at the city lights. But what choice did I have? None. His hand found mine in the darkness. Which is why I'll make sure there are no consequences. You're under my protection, Leah. I meant what I said. Anyone who tries to use you against me, anyone who tries to force you into something you don't want, They'll learn what Cicely taught me about eliminating threats. You keep saying that. What did Cicely teach you? His jaw tightened. That loyalty is earned through fear as much as respect. That sometimes mercy is weakness. That to protect what you love, you have to be willing to destroy what threatens it. He turned to me, his eyes shadowed. They broke me down, Leah. Broke the boy I was. Then they rebuilt me into someone who could lead. Someone who wouldn't hesitate. Someone who'd kill his own family if they threatened what I've sworn to protect. And what have you sworn to protect? This family, this empire, and you. The confession came out rough. God help me, you. Even though it makes no sense, even though it threatens everything I've built, I can't let you go. Can't stop seeing you as mine. His thumb traced my palm, and I felt the truth of his words in that simple touch. We were bound by something neither of us understood fully, something that defied logic and position, and 7 years of forced separation. Take me home, I whispered. Not his home, not the estate with its servants and obligations. Home, wherever that was now. But Aiden shook his head. Not yet. There's something you need to see first. He directed Marco to drive to a different part of the city, the financial district, all glass and steel and modern wealth. We pulled up to a high-rise tower, and Aiden led me inside, past security that nodded respectfully, up to the top floor. The penthouse was stunning. Floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the city, modern furniture in shades of charcoal and cream, artwork that probably cost more than most cars. But what caught my attention was the second bedroom, converted into an office, with a desk facing those windows and shelves lined with books. This is my private residence, Aiden said quietly. Away from the estate, away from the family business. The one place I can be something other than Don Moretti. He moved to stand beside me at the window. I want you to have a key. A safe place to come if things at the estate become too much. If you need distance from my mother, from the whispers, from all of it. I turned to face him, seeing the vulnerability he usually kept so carefully hidden. Why? Because you deserve a sanctuary. And because... He stopped, jaw working. Because I need to know you're somewhere I can find you. Somewhere you're safe. The admission hung between us, heavy with meaning. This was more than protection. This was claiming me in a way that went beyond political necessity. Aiden. He kissed me. After 7 years of distance, of carefully maintained boundaries, of pretending whatever had existed between us was dead, he finally crossed that line. His hands cupped my face, his mouth demanding and gentle simultaneously. And I forgot every reason this was complicated, impossible, dangerous. When we broke apart, both breathing hard, his forehead rested against mine. Tell me to stop, he whispered. Tell me this is wrong, that it can't happen, and I'll walk away. I'll protect you from a distance, keep you safe without making this more complicated. But God, Leah, tell me soon, because I'm barely holding on here. I should have said stop, should have remembered he was the Mafia Don, and I was the maid's daughter, and nothing had really changed since we were 17 and 18, desperate and hopeful under stars that promised nothing but pain. But I'd spent 7 years wondering what if. 7 years building a life from scraps while he'd become something cold and dangerous in Sicily. And now we were here, finally, impossibly. And I was so tired of being invisible. Don't stop, I said. His control shattered. I woke to sunlight streaming through unfamiliar windows and Aiden's arm heavy across my waist. For a moment, I was disoriented. This wasn't my room in the servants' quarters, wasn't anywhere I'd been before. Then memory flooded back. The penthouse, his sanctuary, the line we'd finally, irrevocably crossed. He stirred behind me, his breath warm against my shoulder. You're thinking too loud. Despite everything, I smiled. How can you tell? Your breathing changes when you're overthinking. His fingers traced lazy patterns on my hip. You used to do it when we were kids. I'd catch you in the garden, worrying yourself into knots, and I'd have to distract you with something ridiculous. Like the time you insisted we could train the estate cats to perform a circus. I still maintain that was a solid plan. Those cats just lacked ambition. His voice held a smile, something lighter than I'd heard since his return. We got 3 of them to jump through a hoop before your mother found us and forbade the whole thing. She was worried the Don would fire her if his heir got scratched up by feral cats. My grandfather thought it was hilarious. Aiden's arm tightened around me. He told my father that any boy creative enough to attempt cat circus training was going to go far. I think that's when my father first realized I wasn't going to be the soldier he wanted. I was going to be something more complicated. The memory felt precious, fragile. A glimpse of who Aiden had been before Cicely transformed him. I turned in his arms, studying his face in the morning light. He looked younger like this, unguarded, the hard edges softened by sleep, and something like contentment. Do you regret it? I asked. Last night? No. His gray eyes held mine, serious. But I should, because I've just made everything exponentially more complicated. The families will find out. They always do. And when they discover the Don is sleeping with Roberto Castellano's daughter, the speculation will be infinite. Political alliance, territorial play, some elaborate scheme to merge family holdings. Is that what this is? A political move? His jaw tightened. You know it's not. Then what is it? It's the boy who fell in love with you at 15, finally getting to touch what he's wanted for 13 years. It's the man I've become trying to hold on to the last piece of his humanity. He stopped, his hand coming up to cup my face. It's me being selfish, Leah, because I should push you away, should keep you at arm's length for your own safety. But I can't anymore. I've tried, and I can't. A loud knock interrupted whatever I might have said. Aiden's expression shifted instantly, the momentary vulnerability locked away behind cold control. He rose, pulling on pants and shrugging into a shirt, and opened the door to reveal Marco. Boss, we have a situation. The Benedetti family called an emergency council meeting. They're claiming Leah's acknowledgement as a Castellano creates a conflict of interest that needs to be addressed. Aiden's voice went lethal. What kind of conflict? They're saying that Roberto Castellano had information before he died. Information about certain families' operations. And if Leah has claim to his holdings, even unofficially, she might have access to documentation that could be damaging. They want assurance she won't be used as a weapon against them. Idiots, Aiden bit out. Leah has no interest in any of that. Lorenzo himself confirmed she's claiming no holdings. I know, boss. But Antonio Benedetti is pushing hard. Says it's a matter of security for all the families. The meeting's in 2 hours at the Russo compound. Aiden turned to me, his expression unreadable. Get dressed. You're coming with me. Is that safe? Safer than leaving you here alone. If Benedetti's making moves this fast, he has something planned. I want you where I can see you. Marco left, and I rose, acutely aware of Aiden's eyes tracking my movement. We don't have clothes here for... He opened the closet in the bedroom to reveal several outfits, all in my size. My surprise must have shown, because his expression turned rueful. I had Rosa send measurements to a designer friend. I thought, if you were going to use this space, you should have appropriate clothes here. Just in case. Just in case we ended up exactly where we were now, tangled together in ways that defied every rule of his world. I selected a simple black dress, appropriate for a council meeting, and felt his eyes on me the entire time I dressed. Leah. His voice stopped me at the door. Whatever happens at this meeting, whatever anyone says or implies, Remember that you're under my protection. The Benedettis can't touch you. None of them can. But I heard the unspoken addition. As long as I'm alive to protect you. The Russo compound was elegant violence made manifest. Beautiful gardens hiding gun emplacements. Sculptures that probably contained weapons caches. A fountain that definitely had bodies in its history. We were escorted to a conference room where the other family heads waited. Lorenzo Castellano sat at one end of the table, Isabella beside him, her expression triumphant. Antonio Benedetti, a heavy-set man with shrewd eyes, held the other end. The Vittore and Marino families filled the sides, along with representatives from lesser-aligned families. Don Moretti, Antonio inclined his head, and Miss Ricci, thank you for coming on such short notice. Let's dispense with pleasantries, Benedetti. What's this really about? Aiden's voice was ice. Antonio spread his hands in false reasonableness. We have concerns about information security. Roberto Castellano was privy to many delicate business matters before his death. If his daughter, he nodded toward me, has any claim to his effects, including documentation, it creates a vulnerability for all the families. Leah has claimed no holdings, Aiden said flatly. You were at Sacred Heart. You heard the terms. Yes, but terms can change, especially if incentivized. Antonio's gaze slid to me, calculating. Tell me, Miss Ricci, what do you know about your father's business dealings? Nothing. The truth. I didn't even know he was my father until 2 days ago. Convenient timing, isn't it? Isabella's voice dripped poison. Right when Aiden takes power, suddenly you discover this valuable connection. One might wonder if it wasn't planned. If perhaps the Morettis knew all along and waited for the right moment to play this card. Careful, Isabella. Aiden's voice went dangerous. You're suggesting my grandfather engaged in a quarter-century conspiracy. That's a serious accusation. Is it untrue? She leaned forward. Roberto died in a convenient car accident. That your family ruled accidental, Aiden interrupted. And shortly after, his pregnant lover finds employment at the Moretti estate, where she stays for 25 years, her daughter growing up alongside the future Dawn. A daughter who just happens to have Castellano blood, who just happens to be conveniently positioned as your. What exactly, Aiden? Lover? Political pawn? Future wife? The room went silent. Every eye turned to me and Aiden, assessing the truth of Isabella's implication. My relationship with Leah, Aiden said carefully, is none of this council's business. It is if it represents a merger of Moretti and Castellano interests, Antonio argued. If you're positioning her as your wife, then her bloodline matters politically. Her access to Castellano resources matters. Her potential claims matter. I'm not claiming anything. I stood, surprising myself with the vehemence. I didn't ask for this. I didn't ask to discover Roberto was my father. Didn't ask to be dragged into family politics. Didn't ask for any of this. I'm a maid's daughter who grew up in servants' quarters. That's all I've ever been. Is it? Lorenzo spoke for the first time, his voice deceptively mild. Or are you exactly what Aiden Moretti needs right now? Someone with legitimate Castellano blood who can justify a merger of families, who can give him access to our resources and connections while maintaining the fiction of protection and romance. That's enough. Aiden stood, his control fracturing. You're suggesting I've orchestrated an elaborate scheme going back to before my birth, involving my grandfather, Leah's mother, and Roberto's death. Do you hear how insane that sounds? Does it? Antonio produced a folder, sliding it across the table. Because we did some investigation after the Sacred Heart announcement, and we found some interesting information about Maria Ricci. My mother. My stomach clenched. Maria Ricci worked briefly for the Castellano family. Antonio continued. Not just as a waitress, as she claims, but as Roberto's personal assistant. She had access to his files, his contacts, his business dealings. Then Roberto died suddenly, and she appeared at the Moretti estate pregnant. Why would the old Don take in a pregnant woman with no references, no family, unless she brought something valuable? Unless she had information worth protecting? "You're reaching," Aiden said, but I heard the doubt creeping into his voice. "Am I? Or did your grandfather see an opportunity? Take in Roberto's woman, keep her close, ensure her daughter grew up loyal to the Moretti family. Wait for the right moment to reveal the connection, use it to pressure the Castellanos, maybe even position that daughter as your wife to create a legitimate alliance. It's actually brilliant if you think about it. A quarter-century plan that puts the Morettis in position to—" "My grandfather loved my grandmother," Aiden interrupted, his voice sharp. "He wasn't some Machiavellian puppet master arranging marriages decades in advance. Then why did he keep Maria Ricci employed for 25 years? Why allow you and Leah to grow close? Why tell you about her bloodline the night before Sicily?" Lorenzo's eyes glittered. "Because he was building something, Aiden. And now here you are, exactly where he wanted you, with Castellano's daughter in your bed and the perfect justification for claiming whatever he planned." The room spun, because it made terrible sense. My mother's story had always felt incomplete, the old Don's kindness too convenient. What if they were right? What if I was just a piece in a game I'd never understood? I looked at Aiden, saw the calculation in his eyes, the doubt. He was wondering too. Wondering if his grandfather had manipulated us both, if everything we felt was just conditioning, careful placement of two children who'd grow into politically useful adults. "Even if all this is true," Aiden said slowly, "it doesn't change current reality. Leah exists. She has Castellano blood. She's under my protection. Whatever scheme you think my grandfather had, it's irrelevant now. What matters is that she's safe and the families remain at peace." "But is she safe?" Isabella's voice was silk. "Because if your grandfather did plan this, if he positioned Leah as some key to Moretti-Castellano alliance, then someone might want to remove that key, prevent whatever power shift he intended. And if you're sleeping with her, Aiden, you've just made her the most valuable target in the city." The threat was barely veiled, and I saw the moment Aiden realized she was right. By claiming me, by making our relationship public, he'd painted a target on my back that was even bigger than before. "This council is over," he said, his voice leaving no room for argument. "Leah has made her position clear. She wants no part of Castellano business, claims no holdings, seeks only safety. Anyone who threatens that, anyone who views her as a target or a tool, will answer to me personally. Are we clear?" The families nodded, but I saw the looks exchanged. They weren't convinced. They saw me as a threat, or an opportunity or a weakness, but not as what I actually was. A woman caught between impossible positions, trying to survive forces I barely understood. In the car afterward, Aiden's control finally fractured. "They're going to come after you. Maybe not directly, but they'll test boundaries. See if you really are my weakness." "And am I?" He turned to me, his eyes holding something raw, unguarded. "Yes. God help me, yes. Because everything they said in there, all the conspiracy theories about my grandfather's planning, even if it's true, even if we were manipulated into this, it doesn't change what I feel. I've spent 7 years trying to kill it, and I can't. You're my weakness, Leah, and that makes you the most dangerous person in my life." "So what do we do?" His jaw set with determination. "We survive. Together. And if anyone tries to use you against me, if anyone tries to prove I'm weak because I care about you, they'll discover exactly what Sicily taught me about eliminating threats. I'll burn this city down before I let anyone hurt you." The promise should have comforted me. Instead, it felt like another cage closing, because now I wasn't just the maid's daughter caught in Mafia politics. I was Aiden Moretti's acknowledged weakness, the one thing enemies could use to bring down the man who'd claimed me. And in this world, that was a death sentence. 3 days after the council meeting, everything went to hell. I was in the estate library, trying to lose myself in a book and failing spectacularly, when Rosa burst in, her face pale. "Leah, you need to come now. It's your mother." My heart stopped. I ran through the house, Rosa at my heels, to find Marco and 2 other men carrying my mother on a stretcher. Her face was gray, her breathing shallow, blood soaking through the blanket they'd wrapped around her. "Mama." I tried to reach her, but Marco caught my arm. "Miss Leah, she's been shot. We're taking her to Dr. Russo. He's the family surgeon, discreet." "Shot? How? Who?" "I was in the garden." My mother gasped, her eyes finding mine. 2 men asked about files. Roberto's files. I told them I had nothing, I swear, Leah. They shot me anyway. Said you needed to learn cooperation. Rage and terror warred in my chest. They'd hurt my mother to send me a message. The Benedettis? The Castellanos? Someone testing whether Aiden would protect us? "Where's Aiden?" I demanded. "Meeting at the port," Marco said. "I've sent word. He'll be here soon. But right now your mother needs surgery. Dr. Russo's waiting." They carried her away, and I collapsed onto the foyer bench, my mind racing. This was my fault. By existing, by being Roberto's daughter, by sleeping with Aiden, I'd made my mother a target. "Leah." Aiden's voice made me look up. He'd arrived impossibly fast, his suit disheveled, his expression thunderous. "Are you hurt?" "Not me. Mama. They shot her to send a message." His jaw clenched. "Who?" She didn't recognize them, but they asked about Roberto's files. I stood facing him. This is about the conspiracy theories from the council meeting. Someone thinks I have access to information, thinks hurting her will force me to cooperate. Then they're idiots who are about to learn a very painful lesson. He pulled out his phone, rapid-firing instructions in Italian. "Marco, get every man on this. I want to know who ordered this hit, who carried it out, and where they're hiding. No mercy, no negotiation. Aiden." "Not now, Leah." His voice was ice. "I'm handling this." Dr. Russo emerged from the surgery wing 2 hours later, his expression carefully neutral. "The bullet missed vital organs, but she's lost a lot of blood. She'll survive, but recovery will be long. She needs rest, no stress." I slumped with relief. Alive. Mama was alive. "Can I see her?" "Briefly. She's sedated, but she's asking for you." My mother looked tiny in the hospital bed, tubes and monitors making her seem fragile in ways I'd never seen. She'd always been strong, unbreakable. This woman looked breakable. "Piccola." Her voice was barely audible. "I need to tell you something. About Roberto. About the files." "Mama, rest. We can talk later." "No, listen." She gripped my hand with surprising strength. Roberto did leave files. Information about all the families. Insurance, he called it. Something to keep them from betraying him. I kept them after he died. Hid them. I thought if things got bad, I could trade them for protection. My stomach dropped. "Where are the files?" "Safety deposit box. Key is in my room, hidden in the false bottom of my jewelry box." She coughed, pain flashing across her face. "I'm sorry, Leah. I thought keeping them was smart. But now they're leverage," I finished. "The families think I have them. That's why they're coming after us. You need to decide what to do with them. Trade them for safety, or destroy them and risk having no protection." She closed her eyes. "I'm so sorry. I tried to keep you safe, and I've only made you a target. You did what you thought was best. I squeezed her hand. Rest now. I'll figure this out. But as I left her room, I had no idea how to figure out anything. I was 25 years old, the maid's daughter who'd been thrust into a world of violence and power plays I barely comprehended. And now, I held the key to information that could destroy families, end alliances, start wars. I found Aiden in his study, poring over reports with Marco. He looked up when I entered, his expression softening fractionally. How is she? Alive. But Aiden, there's something you need to know. I told him about the files, watched his expression cycle through surprise, calculation, fury. Roberto's insurance files. I'd heard rumors they existed, but most people thought it was myth. He stood pacing. Do you understand what this means, Leah? Every family in this city will want those files, either to protect themselves from whatever information Roberto gathered, or to use against their enemies. You're not just a political complication anymore. You're the key to potential power that could reshape everything. Then we destroy them. No. His voice was sharp. We can't. Because the moment we destroy them, the moment families know they can't get that information, they have no reason to keep you alive. Right now, you're valuable. That's what keeps you safe. So I'm a hostage to information I don't even have yet? Essentially, yes. He moved to me, his hands framing my face. But we can use this. Control the narrative. Make it clear that I have the files, that they're under my protection, that anyone who threatens you threatens access to information they desperately want. That's insane. That's survival. His gray eyes held mine, intense. Leah, listen to me. We get those files, we secure them, and we let it be known that they're locked away. Insurance for your safety and mine. The families won't touch you because they need to know what Roberto knew. And eventually, when things settle, when alliances stabilize, we can decide what to do with them. And in the meantime, we survive. Together. The way we've always been meant to. I wanted to argue. To tell him this was too dangerous. Too complicated. But what choice did I have? The bullet in my mother proved that invisibility was no longer an option. Fine. But Aiden, I need something from you. Anything. The truth. About your grandfather. About whether he planned this. Manipulated us into this position. I pulled back to look at him fully. Because if he did, if everything we feel is just conditioning and careful placement, I need to know. Before we go any further, before we risk everything on something that might be fake. His jaw tightened. I've wondered the same thing. Every night since that council meeting, I've wondered if what I feel for you is real or just programming. If loving you is genuine or just following a path someone else laid out decades ago. And what did you decide? That it doesn't matter. He pulled me close, his forehead resting against mine. Because even if my grandfather did plan this, even if he positioned us as children with the hope we'd end up exactly here, what I feel is real to me. The years of wanting you, the 7 years of trying to forget you, the impossibility of looking at you and not feeling like something essential clicks into place. That's mine, my choice, my emotion, not something he could manufacture or control. You sound certain. I am. Because I've had 13 years to obsess over you, Leah. 13 years of knowing loving you was complicated and impossible and dangerous. If it was just conditioning, if it was just following someone else's script, I'd have been able to kill it, to burn it out in Sicily. But I couldn't. Every person I killed, every brutal lesson I learned, every time I became more of the Dawn they needed me to be, you were still there, still calling to me, still feeling like the one real thing in a world built on lies. Tears burned my eyes. I'm scared, Aiden. Scared of what this means, Scared of the danger. Scared of losing you or my mother or myself in all of this. I know. I'm scared too. But here's what I'm more scared of. Living without you. Letting fear make me push you away again. Spending the rest of my life wondering what we could have been if I'd just been brave enough to claim you. To fight for you. To burn down anyone who tried to come between us. That's not love. That's obsession. Maybe they're the same thing in this world. His lips brushed my forehead. But obsession or love or whatever combination of both, it's real. And it's ours. And I'm done pretending it's anything else. The next day, we retrieved the files from my mother's safety deposit box. Thick folders full of documentation, photos, financial records, taped conversations. Roberto Castellano had spent years collecting evidence of every family's secret sins, their illegal operations, their betrayals. Enough information to destroy them all. Aiden secured the files in his personal safe, then called a meeting of the 5 families. Everyone came, driven by curiosity and fear in equal measure. I have Roberto Castellano's insurance files, Aiden announced without preamble. Documentation of operations, alliances, transgressions. Information that could devastate every family represented here. The room erupted in protests, threats, demands. Aiden let it wash over him, waiting for silence before continuing. I'm not using this information. I'm not threatening anyone. The files stay locked away, insurance against anyone threatening Leah or her mother. But know this, if anything happens to them, if either of them is harmed or threatened, or forced into something against their will, those files go public. Every dirty secret, every buried body, every betrayal will be exposed, and we'll all burn together. Lorenzo Castellano stood slowly. You're holding us hostage, using our own secrets against us. I'm protecting what's mine, Aiden corrected. The same thing any of you would do. Leah Ricci stays under my protection, completely untouchable, and your secrets stay secret. Fair trade. And what stops you from using this information anyway? Antonio Benedetti demanded. We're supposed to just trust you? No, you're supposed to understand that I have no interest in your business as long as you don't interfere with mine. Leah is mine. The files are leveraged to ensure she stays safe. Beyond that, I don't care about your operations. Run your territories, make your deals, live your lives. Just stay away from what I've claimed. The families exchanged glances, calculating. Finally, Lorenzo nodded. Terms accepted. But Aiden, understand this. You've just made yourself dependent on that girl's safety. If she dies of natural causes, if she has an accident, if anything happens to her, we'll expect those files destroyed as part of her estate. Leah isn't going anywhere, Aiden said coldly. She's going to live a very long, very safe life. And if anyone tests whether she's really my weakness, they'll discover exactly how dangerous I am when protecting what I love. The word love hung in the air, a public admission that changed everything. The families had their confirmation. This wasn't just political alliance or strategic positioning. Aiden Moretti loved Roberto Castellano's daughter, and that made both of us vulnerable and untouchable simultaneously. As the families filed out, Isabella Castellano paused beside me. You've won, she said quietly. For now. But love makes people careless, emotional, weak. Eventually, he'll make a mistake. And when he does, when he chooses you over the family's interests, that's when we'll know he's lost the strength to lead. Then I guess you'll be waiting a long time, I replied. Because Aiden is strong enough to be both. A Don who protects his empire, and a man who loves without apology. That's not weakness. That's balance. She walked away without responding, but I saw the doubt in her expression. Maybe she was starting to realize that power and love weren't mutually exclusive. That Aiden's devotion to me didn't diminish his capability as leader, but enhanced it. That night, back at the penthouse, our penthouse now, Aiden pulled me into his arms. "We survived," he murmured against my hair. "The council, the threats, the revelation about the files. We survived it all. Barely. But we did, together, just like I promised." He tilted my face up to his. "Leah, I need you to understand something. What I said today about loving you, that wasn't strategic. It wasn't calculated. It was the truth. Probably the first completely honest thing I've said in a council meeting since taking power. It made you vulnerable. It made me human." His thumb traced my cheekbone. "For 7 years in Sicily, they trained me to be cold, calculating, unfeeling, to see people as pieces on a chessboard rather than individuals with value. And I succeeded. I became exactly what they wanted. But then I came home and saw you, and everything they'd tried to kill in me came roaring back. You make me human again, Leah. And yes, that's vulnerable. But it's also the only way I want to live. The families will test it. Isabella's right about that. Let them. They'll learn that loving you doesn't make me weak. It makes me more dangerous. Because now I have something worth killing for. Worth dying for. Worth burning this entire city down for." His eyes held mine, fierce and certain. "You're mine, Leah Ricci. You've been mine since we were children. Mine through 7 years of separation. Mine through all the complications and politics and danger. And I'm yours. Completely, irrevocably, terrifyingly yours. Whatever comes next, we face it together." I kissed him then, pouring all my fear and hope and desperate love into it. Because he was right. We were bound by something stronger than bloodlines or alliances or carefully laid plans. We were bound by choice, choosing each other despite the impossibility, choosing love despite the danger, choosing together despite every force trying to tear us apart. 3 months later, my mother recovered and returned to light duties at the estate. Her choice, despite Aiden's offer to retire her with full pension. "I've worked here 25 years, she'd said. "It's my home too." The files remained locked in Aiden's safe, insurance nobody dared to challenge. The Castellanos accepted me with grudging respect. Isabella's humiliation at being thrown out transformed into cautious diplomacy. And the other families learned what it meant to threaten what Aiden Moretti had claimed. But the most significant change was personal. Aiden proposed properly, not in the midst of crisis, but on a quiet evening in the garden where we'd once whispered impossible dreams. Down on one knee, ring in hand, asking if I'd be his wife. Not for political alliance, not for family strategy, but because he loved me. I said yes. The wedding was small by mob standards, just the 5 families and close friends. My mother cried. Marco gave me away, since I had no father to walk me down the aisle. And when Aiden and I exchanged vows, I saw the boy I'd loved peeking through the dangerous man he'd become, reminding me that transformation didn't mean losing yourself entirely. Standing there, holding his hands, promising forever, I finally understood what we'd survived for. Not just to stay alive in a world of violence and power, but to prove that love could exist here too. That 2 people from impossible positions could build something real and lasting, despite every obstacle. We'd been the maid's daughter and the Mafia Don. We'd been children playing with cats and teenagers dreaming under stars. We'd been separated by distance and duty, and 7 years of becoming different people. But we'd found our way back, complicated and scarred, and more dangerous than we'd ever imagined. But together. And in this world, where loyalty was currency and power was survival, that togetherness was the most revolutionary thing we could have chosen. "I love you," Aiden whispered as we danced at our reception. the words still slightly awkward on his tongue after years of suppressing them. More than power, more than this empire, more than anything. I love you too, I replied. Even though you're impossible and dangerous and slightly obsessed with me. Slightly? His smile was genuine, warm. Leah, I've been obsessed with you since I was 15. This is just me finally being honest about it. Then I guess we're both obsessed. Good. He pulled me closer. Because I intend to spend the rest of our lives proving that obsession can look a lot like devotion when you find the right person. And he did. We did. Together. In the complicated, beautiful, dangerous world we'd inherited, we built something neither bloodline nor duty could touch. We built love, and we made it survive.